Welcome to the course, where we will methodically dismantle the complexities of the Scaled Agile Framework to ensure you are fully prepared for the leading SAFe certification exam. This is an unofficial, independently produced course. It is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or connected to Scaled Agile Incorporated in any way. All trademarks, including SAFe and Scaled Agile, belong to their respective owners. In this opening chapter, we are setting the stage by aligning our understanding with the SAFe 6.0 standards. You will learn the exact structure of the exam, how the modules map to your certification success, and the fundamental mindset required to lead an enterprise transformation. By the time we conclude this section, you'll possess a clear roadmap for navigating the materials ahead and a tactical grasp of what the certification board expects from a SAFe Agilist. The Leading SAFe exam is a performance-based assessment designed to evaluate your ability to apply Lean Agile principles in a large-scale enterprise context. It consists of 45 multiple-choice questions that must be completed within a 90-minute time frame, requiring a passing score of approximately 77%. Understanding this blueprint is not merely about memorization. It is about recognizing the pedagogical intent behind each question, which often tests your judgment on how to resolve organizational friction using agile scaling patterns. We will focus on the core curriculum, starting with the evolution of business agility and moving through the mechanical aspects of the Agile Release Train and portfolio management. As we progress through the course, you will notice that the SAFe big picture is our most valuable asset for visual orientation. It acts as a canonical reference for how roles, artifacts, and events interact within the framework, and I recommend you treat it as your primary map throughout this journey. We will dissect the role of a certified SAFe Agilist, which is defined by the ability to foster organizational alignment, improve time to market, and drive genuine employee engagement. You're not just studying for a badge. You're acquiring the language and the framework necessary to influence real-world outcomes in modern digital enterprises. Because this course is structured to be modular and direct, we will focus on high-yield information that directly impacts your exam readiness. We will move through topics like team and technical agility, program increment execution, and lean portfolio management, always keeping the underlying principles at the forefront of our discussions. My objective is to strip away the abstractions and provide you with a grounded, simplified view of how SAFe functions in practice. By following this sequence, you will minimize confusion and maximize your retention of the core terminology that frequently appears in the examination. Effective preparation requires more than just passive consumption of these lectures, so I encourage you to maintain a consistent pace. Think of this as a structured process similar to how we handle technical debt in software development, where addressing foundational concepts early prevents catastrophic failures during the final exam simulation. If you remain disciplined and attentive to the distinctions between these frameworks, you will find that the exam is a logical conclusion to your study rather than an insurmountable hurdle. I look forward to working through these principles with you, starting with the imperative of business agility. I will see you in the next session. Welcome to our exploration of business agility, where we will examine why modern enterprises must fundamentally shift their operating models to survive and thrive in a world of constant disruption. This chapter provides the essential foundation needed to master the Scaled Agile Framework and succeed on your certification exam. In the current global economic landscape, traditional hierarchical structures often struggle to keep pace with the speed of digital change. These legacy organizations were designed for stability and efficiency in predictable environments, yet they now face unprecedented volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. When market disruptions occur, the centralized command and control mechanisms typically seen in functional hierarchies are often too slow to pivot effectively. Business agility is not merely about doing things faster. It is about the ability to compete and thrive in the digital age by quickly responding to market changes and emerging opportunities. By adopting SAFe, you gain the vocabulary and the structural patterns required to bridge the gap between rigid organizational silos and the need for rapid value delivery. Mastering these concepts is the most significant step you will take toward passing the leading SAFe exam and becoming a catalyst for change within your enterprise. SAFe proposes a dual operating system to address these challenges, which effectively connects the necessary stability of a functional hierarchy with the speed and innovation of a network of value streams. The functional hierarchy provides the organization with the stable foundation needed for hiring, personnel development, and long-term skill building, while the value stream network focuses on the flow of value to the customer. By maintaining both systems, an organization avoids the chaos of a purely flat structure while escaping the paralysis of traditional bureaucracies. This dual approach ensures that people remain aligned with the organization's goals while simultaneously allowing teams to organize around the actual creation and delivery of value. It is essentially about acknowledging that while reporting structures must exist, work itself should flow through cross-functional teams that cross traditional department boundaries. When you view an enterprise through this lens, the structural complexity begins to resolve into clear, actionable pathways for improvement. At the very heart of the SAFe big picture is customer centricity, which acts as the guiding light for all strategic and tactical decisions. This principle shifts the focus from delivering specific features or project outputs to understanding the deep needs of a user and the outcomes those users seek to achieve. When the customer is positioned at the center, the organization naturally pivots toward design thinking, ensuring that the solutions built are truly desirable, feasible, and sustainable. Without this anchor, any agile transformation risks becoming a mechanical exercise of implementing ceremonies without actually delivering increased business value. SAFe provides the specific framework to scale these practices from a single team level to the entire enterprise, ensuring that every role, from the executive office to the engineering floor, understands their impact on the final consumer. This organizational alignment is the prerequisite for achieving the 7 core competencies of business agility, each of which contributes to the overall health and responsiveness of the enterprise. The 7 core competencies are lean agile leadership, team and technical agility, agile product delivery, enterprise solution delivery, lean portfolio management, organizational agility, and continuous learning culture. Lean agile leadership is the catalyst. Without active, engaged, and change-promoting leaders, the framework cannot take root. Team and technical agility focuses on the baseline, ensuring that cross-functional teams can effectively produce high-quality, working software or hardware. Agile product delivery scales this team agility by synchronizing multiple groups to release solutions through an Agile Release Train. Enterprise solution delivery addresses the highest level of complexity where systems of systems are involved, often in regulated or mission-critical environments. Lean portfolio management connects the portfolio strategy to the development execution, ensuring that funding and vision are aligned with dynamic market shifts. Organizational agility allows the entire enterprise to adopt a lean mindset, while a continuous learning culture ensures that the institution itself remains adaptable over the long term. Measuring progress is essential, as the framework relies on data-driven growth rather than subjective feelings about how well a transformation is going. SAFe emphasizes core outcomes, flow metrics, and regular competency self-assessments to ensure that the organization is actually achieving the competitive advantage it set out to gain. Flow metrics, such as flow velocity, flow load, and flow efficiency, provide transparent insights into where bottlenecks exist within the value streams. Competency self-assessments, conducted as a periodic institutional rhythm, allow teams to benchmark their maturity against established standards, highlighting areas that require immediate coaching or structural adjustment. This emphasis on measurement transforms the abstract concept of agility into a manageable, improvable system. By understanding how these metrics function, you'll be prepared not only to answer exam questions regarding organizational health, but also to apply this rigor in your professional practice. Understanding these fundamental pillars allows an organization to transition from a reactive state to a proactive, resilient posture. You will find that these concepts appear repeatedly throughout the framework, reinforcing the necessity of a holistic view of the enterprise. As you move forward, keep these 7 competencies in mind as the lens through which all other safe practices are examined. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to this exploration of the Lean-Agile mindset and core values. We will examine the foundational philosophy that makes SAFe functional within large-scale enterprises. In this chapter, we will dissect the Lean-Agile mindset, contrast fixed versus growth mentalities in technical domains, and analyze the SAFe House of Lean. This material is essential for mastering the certification exam and for understanding how to influence organizational change effectively. By the end of this module, you will possess a clear understanding of the cultural pillars that support enterprise transformation. You will learn how to move beyond basic team-level agility and apply these core values to complex, global program structures. Investing time in these concepts is the most reliable way to ensure success on the exam and in real-world leadership scenarios. The SAFe core values are the non-negotiable standards by which we measure all organizational behavior within a framework. Alignment is the first value, emphasizing that everyone must understand the mission and the strategic themes of the enterprise to ensure individual work contributes to organizational outcomes. Transparency is the second, requiring openness about status, metrics, and obstacles so that problems are not hidden or ignored. Respect for people acknowledges that people do all the work, and that management's role is to support them rather than dictate every move. Finally, relentless improvement demands an obsession with making internal processes, products, and teamwork better every single day. These values are not optional cultural enhancements, but are the essential anchors that prevent a large organization from drifting into chaos when scaling agile practices. When applied consistently, they bridge the gap between individual team goals and the broader enterprise strategy. To understand the mindset required, we often look at the contrast between fixed and growth orientations within technical environments. A fixed mindset assumes that intelligence and abilities are static, leading developers and managers to avoid challenging work to prevent failure. Conversely, a growth mindset views challenges as opportunities for skill acquisition, which is a prerequisite for a high-performing Agile Release Train. Leadership must cultivate an environment where psychological safety allows for experimentation, which is the only way to drive innovation in complex systems. If your organizational culture punishes mistakes, people will naturally hide them, which erases transparency and prevents the systemic improvements necessary for long-term survival. Decision-making processes in a healthy enterprise must reflect these values, prioritizing the flow of value over bureaucratic compliance or narrow, localized efficiency. When conflict arises, these core values provide a shared vocabulary to resolve disagreements by asking which path best aligns with our stated principles. The SAFe House of Lean provides a structural representation of these concepts, with value representing the ultimate goal of the system. We place respect for people and culture as the foundation, because without a healthy ecosystem, technical excellence cannot persist. Flow is the mechanism by which that value is delivered, focusing on minimizing batch sizes and reducing handoffs to shorten lead times. Innovation is the engine that keeps the system current, encouraging engineers to introduce new technologies and creative solutions while maintaining operational stability. Relentless improvement, the roof of the house, captures the continuous commitment of every employee to refine the system based on empirical data. Leaders are responsible for these pillars. They must model these behaviors for the organizational culture to shift from a traditional command and control hierarchy to a modern, empowered network. This model is not a theory to be memorized, but a functional tool for auditing the health of your current Agile release, portfolio, or individual project teams. It is vital to acknowledge that SAFe did not reinvent the wheel, but rather contextualize the Agile Manifesto for the needs of the enterprise. The original manifesto prioritizes individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which remains the bedrock of lean agile scaling. However, when you operate across dozens of teams, the social contract of the manifesto must be augmented by systems thinking to prevent local optimizations that hurt the whole. We apply the manifesto by scaling those core tenets through the lens of governance, lean budgeting, and systematic synchronization. This integration ensures that strategic alignment is not just a top-down mandate, but a shared value system that permeates every level of the organization. Understanding this synthesis is critical for the exam, as you will be tested on how these values guide behavior when the path forward is ambiguous. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this chapter, we will explore the first 5 principles of the Scaled Agile Framework, focusing on how economic considerations and systems thinking drive organizational agility. SAFe principle number 1 is to take an economic view. Most developers or managers instinctively focus on technical requirements or resource utilization, but SAFe explicitly mandates that we ground our decisions in economic outcomes. The most critical component here is the cost of delay, which represents the economic impact of not delivering a capability sooner. When you prioritize a backlog, you must weigh the value, the urgency, and the task duration to decide what moves to the top of the queue. If you do not quantify the impact of delay, you are merely guessing, which is a poor strategy for any high-stakes development environment. By prioritizing based on the shortest weighted job first, you effectively minimize the overall cost of delay across the system. This principle encourages early and frequent delivery, as these actions provide objective evidence of value and reduce the risk of building the wrong thing. It is not enough to deliver. You must deliver the right thing at the right time to realize economic efficiency. The second principle is to apply systems thinking to the organization, the product, and the process. Many organizations fall into the trap of local optimization, where individual departments or teams work at maximum capacity, yet the overall value stream remains stagnant. If you optimize a single silo, you often create bottlenecks elsewhere, moving the delay from one team to another without improving the end-to-end delivery speed. A system is a collection of components that work together to produce a result, and SAFe teaches us that we must understand how these components interact. You cannot simply fix a broken deployment process by hiring more developers. You have to look at the entire flow of value from concept to delivery. This requires a shift in perspective, moving away from team-level metrics and toward program-level throughput. True efficiency is only achieved when the entire system is designed and managed to sustain flow. Thirdly, we must assume variability and preserve options using set-based design. Traditional project management often pressures teams to commit to a single solution far too early, which is dangerous in an environment characterized by technical uncertainty. Instead of choosing one architecture and hoping it works, set-based design encourages us to maintain multiple design options for as long as possible. By keeping these options open, you learn more about the constraints of your system and the viability of your designs before making a final commitment. This empirical approach acknowledges that the initial requirements are often based on assumptions that may prove false as development progresses. When you limit your options prematurely, you create a rigid structure that is expensive to change later. Preserving options is not about indecision. It is an active strategy to mitigate risk and ensure that the final product is built upon verified learning rather than mere speculation. Principle 4 involves building incrementally with fast, integrated learning cycles, often modeled on the plan-do-check-adjust loop. The efficiency of a development organization is inversely proportional to the time it takes to integrate components and get feedback from stakeholders. Large, infrequent integration points create high risk because bugs and design flaws remain hidden until the very end. By reducing batch sizes, you allow for more frequent flow, which naturally stabilizes the delivery tempo and improves quality. Smaller batches mean that if a defect is introduced, it is discovered quickly and corrected with minimal effort. This approach turns the complex development process into a series of manageable, fast-paced experiments. The goal is to maximize the speed of the feedback loop, allowing the organization to pivot as soon as evidence suggests a change is needed. Finally, we base milestones on the objective evaluation of working systems. Waterfall project management often relies on subjective status reports and phase gate completions, which provide a false sense of security while hiding the true state of progress. In SAFe, a milestone is only truly achieved when there is verifiable, working software that integrates the various components of the solution. This requires that we have the infrastructure to build, test, and deploy frequently, even if we are not ready for a production release. By focusing on objective data, leaders can make informed decisions about whether to persist, pivot, or stop a project based on its actual performance. This prevents the watermelon effect, where a project appears green on the surface but is internally failing to meet its objectives. Working systems provide the only source of truth that matters when the objective is economic feasibility. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. We are now transitioning into the second half of the Scaled Agile Framework principles, where we shift our focus toward the mechanics of flow and the autonomy of the human element. Principle 6, making value flow without interruptions, is an exercise in applied systems thinking. To achieve this, we must first visualize the work, as you cannot optimize a system you cannot see. By limiting work in process, we effectively prevent the context switching that cripples productivity and increases cycle time. When everyone is working on everything, nothing gets completed, which is why batch size reduction is equally critical. Small batches move through the system faster and provide earlier feedback loops, which serves to reduce the risk of building the wrong thing. Managing queue lengths is the final piece of this puzzle, as long queues are the primary indicator of stall value. When a queue grows, wait times increase exponentially, a phenomenon best understood through the lens of Little's law and Kingman's formula. If the work arriving at a station exceeds the processing capacity on a sustained basis, the delay is mathematically guaranteed to grow. Moving to Principle 7, applying cadence and synchronization, we address the uncertainty inherent in complex product development. Cadence provides a predictable heartbeat, allowing the organization to focus on repetitive planning and delivery events rather than worrying about when things occur. Synchronization across multiple domains ensures that cross-functional dependencies are identified and resolved during common planning windows. Without this alignment, teams drift apart, creating silos that prevent the realization of value at scale. The goal is to move from a state of constant, chaotic reorganization to one of rhythmic, predictable delivery. This synchronization allows us to manage the inevitable variation in our work by providing consistent points of interaction across the entire enterprise. It essentially creates a framework where uncertainty can be handled within the bounds of a known delivery interval. Principle 8 focuses on unlocking the intrinsic motivation of knowledge workers, which is arguably the most neglected aspect of management. Drawing from research by Daniel Pink and others, SAFe posits that autonomy, mastery, and purpose are the primary drivers of performance in creative roles. Autonomy implies that teams have the freedom to determine their own methods of work as long as they align with organizational goals. Mastery is achieved through a commitment to excellence and continuous learning, supported by an environment that rewards improvement rather than just output. Purpose is provided by connecting individual tasks to the larger strategic vision of the value stream, ensuring that everyone understands the why behind their what. When you strip away command and control structures, you find that people are naturally inclined to solve difficult problems, provided they have the tools and the clarity to do so. Decentralizing decision-making, our ninth principle, is often misunderstood as a complete abdication of control. In reality, it is a strategic distribution of authority that places the power to decide where the information resides. Decisions that are frequent, time-critical, or involve technical detail should be pushed down to the teams or individuals closest to the work. Conversely, decisions that are infrequent, long-lasting, or carry significant financial consequences should remain centralized to ensure strategic alignment. This distinction is vital because centralized decision-making for every microtask creates a bottleneck that slows the entire organization to a crawl. By decentralizing non-strategic choices, we reduce cycle time, increase innovation, and allow the leadership team to focus on the high-level architecture and vision that the teams cannot see. Finally, Principle 10 compels us to organize around value. In a traditional functional organization, people are grouped by their expertise, such as a database department or a testing pool, which leads to slow movement of code across departmental boundaries. Safe advocates for the value stream approach, where we form cross-functional Agile Release Trains that contain everyone necessary to conceptualize, build, and deploy a product. When we align our reporting and management structures with these value streams, we eliminate the need for costly handoffs and cross-departmental negotiations. Everything is focused on delivering a specific product or service to a specific customer segment. This shift changes the conversation from who works for which manager to what value are we creating together. It is the structural manifestation of everything we have discussed regarding flow, as it removes the barriers that prevent work from moving through the system to the stakeholder. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to this module, where we explore the essential responsibilities of a lean agile leader. We will examine how a leader shifts from traditional command and control to a role focused on coaching, teaching, and systemic improvement. If you are pursuing your Leading Safe certification, you likely know that the framework is not just about processes, but about profound behavioral change. This course is your bridge to mastering those complexities, ensuring you pass the exam while truly understanding how to foster value in a modern enterprise. By completing this journey, you will gain the clarity required to drive successful transformations and lead high-performing teams with confidence. We have structured this curriculum to cut through the noise, delivering purely the facts you need to excel in your role and on the certification assessment. In the traditional management paradigm, a leader's primary duty is to direct work and monitor individual activity through a hierarchical structure. Lean Agile leadership rejects this stance in favor of a model where leaders act as teachers, coaches, and system designers. You are not meant to manage tasks, but to manage the flow of value through the system by addressing systemic impediments. This requires a fundamental shift in perception where you view the workers as the domain experts who are best positioned to solve the problems they encounter. When you stop dictating solutions, you create the necessary vacuum for innovation to thrive under the guidance of your strategic intent. By shifting your focus from controlling the people to controlling the environment, you enable the organization to react faster to market changes. This is essentially about designing a system that makes it easy for individuals to do the right thing every single day. If your team members are struggling with technical debt or process bottlenecks, these are systemic issues you must resolve at the leadership level. Modeling desirable behaviors is the most potent tool you have, as culture is essentially a reflection of what leaders tolerate and celebrate. If you demand agility but prioritize rigid, monolithic plans, the organization will naturally gravitate toward the path of least resistance. You must lead by example, which means demonstrating transparency, humility, and a relentless focus on customer value in your own daily interactions. When you openly admit to making a mistake or explicitly ask for feedback on your own performance, you signal that the organization is a safe place for growth. This is the cornerstone of psychological safety, a climate where people feel comfortable taking risks without fear of retribution. Without trust, communication bottlenecks arise, and the flow of information necessary for the Agile Release Train to succeed will simply dry up. By fostering a culture of continuous learning, you ensure that the people within the system are constantly evolving alongside the technology they build. Trust is not a soft skill. It is an economic driver that reduces friction and accelerates decision-making across the enterprise. Leading the change through the safe implementation roadmap requires a disciplined approach to organizational transformation that balances vision with execution. You are responsible for defining the strategic direction while providing the resources, including time, tools, and budget, that teams need to succeed. This means you must align the vision of the program increment with the broader strategic themes of the portfolio without micromanaging the delivery teams. Empowerment is often misunderstood as simply letting go, but in a structured environment, it is about staying within the guardrails you have established. Your role is to define the boundaries of the solution space and then rely on the expertise of the teams to deliver the outcomes within those constraints. Whenever conflict between short-term demands and long-term improvements arises, you must be the one to advocate for the systemic health of the platform. By maintaining this delicate balance, you ensure the organization remains capable of delivering value consistently rather than burning out during a single delivery cycle. Understanding these responsibilities is critical because the exam will test your ability to distinguish between these modern leadership traits and outdated administrative practices. You must be able to recognize scenarios where a leader needs to intervene to fix a systemic problem versus scenarios where they should provide autonomy to the team. Remember to keep the focus on the flow of value and the necessity of building an environment where workers can thrive. As you move forward into the next sections, keep this mental model of the leader as a system coach firmly in your mind. This perspective provides the context needed to understand why specific ceremonies and roles function the way they do within the framework. By focusing on your influence rather than your authority, you become an indispensable part of the team's ability to produce high-value solutions. I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome back, and let us now focus on strategic approaches to mastering key concepts required for your certification exam. This chapter serves as a targeted synthesis designed to help you organize your knowledge and recognize patterns that frequently appear in the official assessment. Strategy in the context of an exam often entails recognizing the underlying intent of the question setter rather than just reciting definitions. When you encounter a scenario involving business agility, you should always look for indicators that weigh the economic impact of decisions against long-term organizational viability. SAFE consistently emphasizes that business agility is not merely about velocity, but about the ability to navigate change through technical and organizational resilience. You must distinguish between Lean, which focuses on the elimination of waste and value optimization, and Agile, which prioritizes adaptive planning and iterative delivery. While the Agile Manifesto laid the groundwork for individual team success, SAFE expands these concepts to a portfolio level through a structured framework. If a question asks how to resolve a bottleneck, look for answers that suggest flow visualization or waste reduction rather than simply adding more resources. Understanding that SAFE is essentially a codified version of Lean Agile practices will help you filter out distractions. Always seek the answer that aligns with the core principles of decentralized decision-making and flow acceleration. The 10 SAFE principles and 7 core competencies are the structural pillars you must be able to recall with precision. Rather than rote memorization, I suggest you map each principle to the specific organizational pain point it aims to resolve. For instance, Principle 1, Take an economic view, is the foundation for every investment decision, while Principle 9, decentralized decision-making, directly impacts how teams maintain speed. When examining scenarios related to the House of Lean, remember that the roof represents the goal of value, while the pillars of respect for people and culture, flow, innovation, and relentless improvement support the structure. Many candidates fall into the trap of confusing the House of Lean with the Agile Manifesto, but the distinction lies in the scope. The Agile Manifesto addresses team interactions, whereas the House of Lean provides the foundational culture required to scale those interactions across the entire enterprise. Keeping these models distinct in your mind is essential for avoiding erroneous choices during the exam. Your ability to use the SAFE big picture diagram is perhaps your most effective tool during the study phase and the test itself. Think of this diagram as the architectural blueprint of the enterprise. If a question describes a problem, you should be able to visualize exactly where in the flow that problem resides. If a scenario involves a disconnect between strategy and execution, your attention should be drawn toward the portfolio level and the alignment of strategic themes. If the issue is related to time to market, you're likely looking for an answer connected to the continuous delivery pipeline. The dual operating system concept, which balances the stable hierarchy with the dynamic network of the Agile Release Train, is another common source of exam questions. Always prioritize answers that reflect a system-wide optimization rather than local improvements that might only benefit a single team. By consistently applying this systemic lens, you will find that the correct answer usually reveals itself through its alignment with the overall flow of value. As we continue our preparations, remember that shifting from a reactive mindset to a proactive, value-centered perspective is the most significant hurdle you will face. Focus on these connections between concepts, and the exam will become far more manageable. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to this chapter on team and technical agility, where we will examine the formation and mechanics of cross-functional agile teams. We're going to deconstruct the structural requirements that permit a team to deliver consistent value within the Scaled Agile Framework. In SAFE, an agile team is defined as a cross-functional group of 5 to 11 individuals who possess all the necessary skills to define, build, test, and deploy increments of value. This implies that the team is not merely a collection of specialists, but a cohesive unit capable of executing the full development lifecycle for its assigned work. By integrating roles such as the Scrum Master or Team Coach, the Product Owner, and the Development Team, we effectively eliminate the dependency bottlenecks that often plague siloed organizational structures. If a team relies on external departments to complete basic tasks like testing or infrastructure provisioning, they are effectively tethered to the velocity of those outside entities. A truly cross-functional team internalizes these capabilities, thereby reducing the wait states that inhibit flow. We achieve this by ensuring that the team composition reflects the end-to-end nature of the value being created rather than just functional expertise. When members understand that their collective outcome is more important than their individual task completion, the team begins to operate as a single engine. This structural change is fundamental because it shifts the focus from managing resources to managing the flow of work through a stable unit. Consequently, the team gains the autonomy required to respond to changing requirements without needing to negotiate with half a dozen other groups. The product owner serves as the primary conduit between the business and the technical execution team, ensuring the team backlog remains aligned with the broader program increment objectives. This role is not simply about prioritizing a list of items, but about maintaining a deep understanding of customer needs and stakeholder expectations. By managing the team backlog, the product owner ensures that the work items are clearly defined, estimated, and ready for development. This requires constant collaboration with the product management team and the business owners to ensure the team's output contributes to the overall solution. The product owner must possess the authority to make decisions regarding the sequence of work during the iteration, which prevents the team from stalling due to unclear priorities. Furthermore, they are responsible for ensuring that the definition of done is met, which safeguards the quality of the increments being delivered. Without a strong product owner, the team often lacks the context required to understand the why behind their tasks, leading to a decline in engagement and output quality. Balancing the needs of stakeholders with the capacity of the team is the primary mechanism through which the product owner fosters alignment. Ultimately, this role ensures that the technical energy expended by the team maps directly to the strategic value defined by the enterprise. Parallel to the product owner, the Scrum Master, or team coach, functions as a servant leader whose primary directive is the health and productivity of the team. This individual does not manage tasks in a traditional sense, but instead manages the environment, processes, and interpersonal dynamics that might impede progress. By coaching the team in standard ceremonies such as iteration planning, the daily stand-up, the iteration review, and the iteration retrospective, the Scrum Master ensures that feedback loops remain tight and effective. During the daily stand-up, for instance, the focus should not be on reporting progress to the Scrum Master, but on coordinating work and identifying impediments that block the team's goals for the day. In the iteration retrospective, the team relies on the Scrum Master to facilitate a psychological climate where honest reflection on process improvement can occur. This role is also essential for insulating the team from external noise, enabling the developers to focus on building quality increments of value. As a coach, the Scrum Master helps the team transition from a prescriptive way of working to a self-organizing culture that is capable of continuous improvement. By removing systemic obstacles, the Scrum Master ensures that the team can maintain a sustainable pace while adhering to the principles of flow that drive the Agile Release Train. Within SAFe, teams adopt different operational models, namely Scrum, Kanban, or a hybrid approach often referred to as Scrumban, depending on their specific context and nature of work. Scrum is naturally suited for teams that require high levels of predictability and structure through fixed-length, 2-week iterations. Conversely, Kanban focuses on flow and work-in-progress limits, which is often preferable for maintenance teams or those dealing with a high volume of unplanned, urgent tasks. Scrumban attempts to combine the structure of Scrum meetings with the flow-based nature of Kanban, providing a flexible framework for teams that need to evolve their process without adopting the full overhead of traditional Scrum. Regardless of the chosen methodology, the requirement for clear, transparent, and prioritized work remains constant across all team types. Teams must ensure that the work they perform is broken down into small, consumable increments that can be verified against acceptance criteria. This level of rigor is what differentiates a high-performing Agile team from a collection of people merely working at the same desk. By leveraging the ceremonies appropriate to their chosen model, teams maintain alignment with the Agile Release Train's cadence. This synchronization is critical because it forces dependency management and ensures that the entire program moves toward its program increment goals in a unified manner. The efficacy of a team is ultimately measured by their ability to deliver value while maintaining alignment with the broader organizational mission of the Agile Release Train. When a team operates in complete isolation, they may achieve high velocity on tasks that contribute little to the overall system, which is a common failure mode in modern software organizations. Therefore, the formation of the team is not just an internal concern, but an integration task within the larger program structure. We must ensure that the team understands their specific role in the delivery pipeline, whether they're focused on building features or addressing technical enablers. High-performing teams are those that view themselves as a vital segment of the value stream rather than as an independent entity. This perspective reinforces a collaborative culture where helping other teams succeed becomes part of the shared responsibility. When the organization provides clear strategic themes and business context, the team can effectively self-organize around those priorities. This alignment serves as the guardrail for autonomy, ensuring that while the team decides how to get the work done, the work itself is always pointed in the right direction. The evolution from being a functional silo to a cross-functional component of value is the cornerstone of sustainable organizational agility. Until our next session. Welcome back. In this chapter, we will explore the core structure of the Agile Release Train, the primary engine of value delivery within SAFe. The Agile Release Train, commonly referred to as the ART, is a long-lived team of cross-functional Agile teams, organized around a single value stream. This is not a project-based temporary grouping, but rather a stable organizational structure that persists over time to deliver a continuous flow of value. By grouping 50 to 125 individuals, the ART synchronizes their efforts toward a common mission, ensuring that multiple teams move in the same direction despite their different areas of focus. This synchronization reduces dependencies between teams and allows for a coherent, integrated delivery of solutions. You can think of the ART as a virtual organization that coordinates its members without the heavy overhead of traditional hierarchical reporting. The primary objective here is to optimize the flow of value while maintaining the autonomy of the individual teams involved in the development process. To ensure the train stays on track, several critical roles act as the leadership and coordination unit. The release train engineer serves as the chief Scrum master for the train, facilitating flow and removing impediments that span across multiple teams. Product management owns the vision and the program backlog, ensuring that the work being performed aligns with the customer's needs and business objectives. System architects provide the technical guidance and design frameworks necessary to ensure that the disparate parts of the system fit together seamlessly. Business owners represent the primary stakeholders who have the authority to make decisions regarding the value delivered, and they play a pivotal role in PI planning. These roles do not serve to micromanage, but rather to create an environment where the ART can function efficiently and predictably. A fundamental concept within this structure is the idea of developing on cadence while releasing on demand. Cadence provides a predictable rhythm of fixed-length iterations and program increments, which naturally reduces complexity and administrative overhead. By standardizing the schedule, the leadership team can set expectations and manage the inherent uncertainty in large-scale software development. However, the release itself is decoupled from this development cadence, meaning that value is released to the customer whenever the business need dictates. This flexibility allows the organization to test the market, gather feedback, and respond to competitive pressures without being tethered to a rigid, synchronous rollout schedule. It represents a pragmatic balance between the necessity of planned synchronization and the reality of market-driven demands. Integration is a significant challenge when scaling, which is why the system team is so integral to the health of the ART. This team is responsible for managing the development environment, creating the infrastructure for continuous integration, and demonstrating the integrated solution at the end of every iteration. Without this support, teams would struggle to verify their contributions against the work of others, leading to significant system-level integration issues. Similarly, shared services provide specialized skills, such as security expertise, compliance auditing, or specialized data management, that are necessary for the train to succeed, but may not be needed full-time by any single team. These internal service providers ensure that while teams remain cross-functional, they're not blocked by the lack of niche capabilities. Alignment is maintained through the program backlog, which acts as the single source of truth for the features and enablers required by the ART. The vision articulated by product management acts as the North Star, ensuring that every team understands the broader goal they are contributing towards. Rather than assigning tasks, leadership focuses on outcomes and clear feature definitions that allow teams to exercise their own best judgment. When alignment between the vision, the backlog, and the collective expertise of 125 people is achieved, the organization gains the capability to deliver complex, high-quality, integrated solutions at speed. It is a system designed to favor transparency, shared understanding, and relentless improvement over fragmented local optimizations. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back to our exploration of the SAFe framework. In this session, we will examine the critical concept of built-in quality and the technical practices essential for sustaining long-term agility. The fundamental premise behind built-in quality is the recognition that quality cannot be inspected into a system after it has been constructed. Instead, it must become a structural component of the entire development lifecycle, spanning from the individual team to the Agile Release Train and up to the overall solution level. When teams attempt to defer quality assurance until the end of an iteration or release, they inevitably encounter the friction of integration hell. This phenomenon occurs when disparate components, which have been developed in isolation, fail to communicate effectively upon assembly. By shifting the focus toward building quality into the process from the very beginning, organizations can avoid these costly rework cycles. This approach shifts the burden of quality away from specialized testing units and places the responsibility squarely within the teams responsible for the value delivery itself. It necessitates a shared understanding that high-quality outputs are not an accidental byproduct of a fast process, but rather the direct result of disciplined technical execution. To achieve this level of quality, we must institutionalize specific technical practices that serve as the bedrock of our development work. Test-driven development remains a primary example, as it forces developers to consider the system's expected behavior before writing a single line of production code. Pairing this with behavior-driven development allows teams to bridge the communication gap between business owners and technical staff by defining scenarios in a language that everyone can understand. Once these tests are in place, the practice of continuous integration becomes non-negotiable, ensuring that code changes are merged into the shared repository frequently. When integration occurs on a daily basis, the risk of massive, system-wide architectural conflicts drops significantly. Furthermore, we must acknowledge the necessity of refactoring as a habitual practice rather than a periodic chore. Refactoring keeps the code base maintainable, allowing it to evolve alongside changing business requirements without collapsing under the weight of accumulated technical debt. When we transition these concepts from software to hardware or firmware environments, the challenge becomes more pronounced but no less vital. While hardware does not benefit from the same ease of automated deployment as software, the underlying philosophy of built-in quality remains identical. We must apply rigorous design quality standards and simulate physical components where possible to validate assumptions early in the development flow. The 5 dimensions of built-in quality offer a framework to help us think systematically about this challenge. We must consider the flow of value, the innate quality of our architecture and design, the precision of our code, the requirements for the system as a whole, and ultimately, our release quality. If any of these dimensions are neglected, the integrity of the system suffers. For example, poor architectural choices early on will inevitably manifest as system quality issues that no amount of late-stage testing can rectify. The system demo serves as the ultimate litmus test for these practices, providing a venue to validate the integrated work of the entire Agile Release Train. It is not merely a meeting to showcase features to stakeholders, but a technical checkpoint to ensure that the system as it stands is actually functional and integrated. By forcing a demonstration of the integrated system, we expose the gaps between our local development successes and the reality of a global system state. This helps us manage technical debt, which, when left unaddressed, functions like a hidden tax on our future velocity. Every bit of complexity we fail to simplify today represents a reduction in the speed at which we can deliver new features tomorrow. Maintaining a focus on quality ensures that our pace remains predictable and that our reliability remains high, providing the business with the genuine agility it requires to thrive. Quality, therefore, is the engine that drives sustainable delivery, not an obstacle that slows us down. See you in the next session. Welcome back. In this lesson, we explore how safe Scrum and Kanban function at the team level to drive value within the Agile Release Train. When we look at the team level in SAFe, we are essentially choosing between two primary execution models, Scrum and Kanban. Safe Scrum follows the classic structure of roles, events, and artifacts, requiring teams to operate within a fixed iteration cadence. The product owner manages the backlog, the Scrum Master facilitates the process, and the development team executes the work. This model is exceptionally effective for teams building new features where you need a predictable rhythm to align with the rest of the train. In contrast, Kanban is better suited for teams with highly variable work, such as maintenance or production support, where a fixed iteration structure might add unnecessary friction. Regardless of the choice, both frameworks serve a singular purpose: delivering high-quality stories that contribute to the larger features identified by the train. The fundamental difference lies in how work is pulled through the system. Yet both frameworks must remain synchronized with the cadence of the program increment. Safe Scrum is built upon the idea of time-boxed iterations, typically 2 weeks long, which force a regular heartbeat for planning, execution, and review. At the start of an iteration, the team defines iteration goals, which act as their North Star for the next few weeks. These goals are not merely a collection of stories, but a commitment to deliver specific business value, ensuring that the team stays aligned with the overall objectives of the art. The Scrum Master focuses on removing impediments and fostering an environment of continuous improvement, while the product owner ensures the backlog is correctly refined and prioritized. Through events like the daily stand-up and iteration planning, transparency is maintained and risks are exposed early. Progress is measured using burn-down charts, which track the remaining effort against the iteration timeline. This clear structure provides the stability required for teams to maintain a sustainable pace while delivering complex technical solutions. For teams that find the rigid boundaries of Scrum restrictive, Safe Kanban provides a more flexible approach centered around the continuous flow of work. The core principles of Kanban are surprisingly simple yet deep. Visualize work, limit work in progress, manage flow, and make policies explicit. By visualizing the workflow on a board, the team can immediately identify where bottlenecks are forming and why work is stalling. Limiting work in progress is the most critical aspect, as it prevents multitasking and forces the team to finish what they have started before pulling in new items. When we manage flow, we look for ways to optimize the time it takes for a request to move from inception to completion. Policies must be explicit so that every team member understands the criteria for moving a ticket between states, such as moving a feature from development to testing. This shift from time-box planning to a demand-driven approach allows for rapid response to changing priorities. To track the effectiveness of a Kanban team, we rely heavily on the cumulative flow diagram, or CFD, rather than a burn-down chart. The CFD provides an X-ray of the team's health by showing the number of items in each state of the process over time. If you see the bands in the CFD widening, you know that work is piling up in a specific area, indicating a constraint that requires immediate attention. Crucially, even when using Kanban, the team must remain integrated with the program Kanban at the art level. Synchronization is achieved through the cadence of the program increment, where Kanban teams still participate in planning and demo events. The key to successfully transitioning between these frameworks is understanding the nature of the work. If your team is struggling with frequent, unpredictable changes, moving to Kanban might be appropriate, provided you have a discipline to limit your WIP and maintain visibility for the art. See you in the next session. Welcome back. In this chapter, we will explore how the Agile Release Train manages value through features and enablers, providing the essential structure for effective delivery. When we discuss the program backlog, We are essentially talking about the primary repository for the work that an Agile Release Train must deliver to achieve its mission. This backlog consists of features, which are specialized artifacts distinct from the user stories you manage at the team level. A feature is a service that fulfills a stakeholder need, and it must be structured to fit within a single program increment. To define a feature effectively, product management must collaborate closely with system architects and stakeholders to articulate a clear benefit hypothesis. This hypothesis acts as a falsifiable statement that informs us whether the investment in the feature was truly worth the effort. Furthermore, every feature requires well-defined acceptance criteria, which serve as the objective standard for determining whether the work is complete and fulfills the intended requirement. While business features provide direct value to the end user, we must also account for enablers, which are equally critical for the long-term health of our solution. Enablers are work items that support the activities needed to extend the architectural runway, allowing current and future business features to be developed. There are four distinct categories of enablers that you should be familiar with: exploration, architecture, infrastructure, and compliance. Exploration enablers are used to reduce uncertainty by researching or prototyping ideas, while architectural enablers focus on building the technical foundation for new functionality. Infrastructure enablers involve the development and maintenance of the build, integration, and deployment environments that keep the pipeline flowing. Finally, compliance enablers ensure that the solution meets necessary regulatory or security standards, which is often an invisible but mandatory part of the development process. Prioritization within the program backlog is not merely a subjective activity, but a rigorous process driven by the weighted shortest job first, or WSJF, algorithm. This method quantifies the relative priority of a job by dividing the cost of delay by the job size, providing a rational basis for ordering work. Cost of delay itself consists of three essential factors: user business value, time criticality, and risk reduction or opportunity enablement. By calculating these components, we ensure that we are focusing our limited capacity on work that delivers the highest economic return in the shortest time. This approach prevents the common pitfall of working on what feels urgent but lacks real economic impact. Using WSJF forces teams to confront the reality of their capacity and makes the trade-off decisions explicit for all stakeholders involved. Managing the flow of these work items requires the use of a program Kanban, which provides transparency into the state of every feature from inception to deployment. The Kanban board allows the art leadership team to visualize bottlenecks, manage work in progress, and ensure that the delivery of features is balanced against the available capacity. As features move across the board, they undergo a continuous process of refinement, where architects and business owners clarify requirements and adjust expectations based on new information. This collaborative environment ensures that the development of features is always aligned with the broader strategic themes and the overarching solution vision established by the enterprise. Without this alignment, an art risks becoming a collection of disconnected teams building software that fails to contribute to the organizational goals. The relationship between features and user stories is hierarchical but remains deeply connected through the decomposition process. A single feature is generally too large for a single team to complete in a sprint, so it is decomposed into several user stories that cross multiple teams or iterations. This decomposition ensures that the large-scale value requested by the business is broken down into manageable, testable, and demonstrable pieces of functionality. By maintaining this traceability from the feature level down to the team backlog, we can monitor progress more effectively and provide early feedback to stakeholders. This entire structure supports the concept of the architectural runway, as each increment of work builds upon the previous one, ensuring that the system remains viable as requirements evolve. See you in the next session. Welcome to the chapter dedicated to art roles. Here we will rigorously examine the responsibilities and operational dynamics that define success within the Agile Release Train. In this chapter, we are going to dissect the critical functions of the release train engineer, product manager, and system architect. You will learn the exact boundaries between team and program backlogs, moving beyond surface-level definitions to understand true ownership. We will explore the specific patterns of behavior expected from product owners during the high-pressure environment of PI planning compared to regular iteration planning. The curriculum also covers the complex integration of Scrum and Kanban teams, ensuring you can manage hybrid models within a single art. By the end of this series, you will master the hierarchy of work items, ranging from strategic level of epics down to the execution-focused stories. We will further clarify the roles of the system team and shared services, which are often sources of confusion in certification assessments. Finally, we will dive into built-in quality, economic rationales for integration, and the mechanics of the weighted shortest job first calculation. This structured approach ensures you are fully prepared to distinguish between correct and distractor answers on your exam. Let us start by grounding ourselves in the specific responsibilities of the ART leadership triad. The release train engineer serves as the train's chief Scrum master, focusing on program-level flow and process improvement. Conversely, the product manager identifies market needs and owns the program backlog, often collaborating with the system architect to balance feature development with architectural runway. It is essential to remember that the system architect holds the primary responsibility for the technological vision, ensuring the system remains viable for future requirements. When analyzing questions concerning these roles, look for the distinction between process facilitation and value delivery. While the product manager decides what is built, the architect ensures it can be built sustainably and at scale. If a scenario describes a bottleneck in architectural support, the system architect is typically the primary point of accountability. Understand that these roles do not overlap in authority, but rather converge on the goal of continuous value delivery. Dissecting these interactions is vital because exam questions often test your ability to route a problem to the correct function within the art. Distinguishing between the team and program backlogs requires an appreciation for the shift in scope. The program backlog represents the entirety of the art, containing features that are cross-functional and generally refined by the product manager. In contrast, the team backlog acts as a subset, holding the stories derived from these features after they have been broken down during planning. You must be able to identify that epic ownership rests at the portfolio level, whereas features are firmly the domain of the program. A common pitfall is assuming that a product owner manages the program backlog, but their primary obligation is the local team backlog. During PI planning, the product owner is tasked with preparing the team with a prioritized backlog, while the product manager ensures that the program backlog is ready for the upcoming increment. Recognizing this delegation of authority is critical when evaluating scenario-based questions about responsibilities. If an individual is spending significant time refining features at the portfolio level, they are likely acting outside their designated scope. Keep these hierarchies clear to avoid choosing answers that shift responsibility to the wrong artifact owner. Effective integration of Scrum teams and Kanban teams within a single art remains a frequent point of inquiry. You should view both as valid approaches to the Lean-Agile mindset, provided they adhere to the cadence and synchronization of the train. The key difference lies in the management of work. Scrum teams utilize fixed-length iterations for commitment, while Kanban teams focus on visualizing flow and limiting work in progress. In exam simulations, you might encounter a scenario where a team is struggling to keep pace with the art's rhythm. The correct intervention for a Kanban team in this context is often to improve their flow metrics or reduce their cycle time, rather than forcing them into a strict iteration-based planning cycle. Both teams must participate in PI planning to ensure alignment, regardless of their internal task management method. Focus on the fact that the art provides the synchronization point. While teams enjoy the autonomy, to choose their delivery methodology. Always evaluate whether the suggested solution preserves the alignment of the team with the overall release schedule. Built-in quality is not an abstract concept, but a prerequisite for the economic stability of the release train. Frequent integration is the primary mechanism for reducing the cost of delays and mitigating technical debt. If you are asked why we integrate early and often, the rationale is purely rooted in economics. The cost of fixing a bug increases logarithmically the longer it remains hidden in the codebase. By implementing rigorous technical practices like test-driven development and continuous deployment, the art ensures that the system remains at a high degree of fitness. Do not confuse the function of a system team with a traditional QA department. The system team is responsible for building and maintaining the development environment and the infrastructure that supports the continuous delivery pipeline. They are enablers, not a gatekeeper, for the rest of the teams. Understanding this distinction is necessary when you are presented with questions about who is responsible for overall system health and integration testing. The weighted shortest job first calculation is a tool for prioritizing work based on the cost of delay divided by the job size. When approaching a problem involving WSJF, you must identify the components that constitute the cost of delay, such as user business value, time criticality, and risk reduction. The exam might present you with a table of potential features and ask you to select the one that should be implemented first. The highest score, derived from dividing the total cost of delay by the job size, will always dictate the priority. Do not be distracted by anecdotal evidence or team preferences. The math is the only arbiter in this framework. If the scenario suggests that a specific feature is urgent but small, the WSJF score will naturally reflect that high priority. Mastering this calculation is a matter of applying the formula consistently across various constraints and economic profiles. I look forward to seeing you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this chapter, we explore the PI planning event, which serves as the essential heartbeat for the Agile Release Train. PI planning is a cadence-based, two-day event that serves as the rhythm of the Agile Release Train, ensuring that everyone involved is aligned on a common mission. Without this synchronous alignment, attempting to coordinate the efforts of 100 or more people becomes an exercise in futility, as miscommunication inevitably leads to wasted effort. During these 2 days, the entire train gathers to define a set of objectives for the coming program increment. This is not merely a scheduling exercise. It is a fundamental synchronization point where cross-functional teams establish a shared understanding of what needs to be delivered and how they intend to achieve it. You will learn how the vision, the roadmap, and the top 10 features act as the primary inputs to this process. By the end of this chapter, you will possess a complete understanding of how to manage the logistics of large-scale planning sessions effectively. Mastering these concepts is critical not only for passing your examination, but for successfully facilitating complex organizational alignment in the real world. Let us proceed to deconstruct these mechanics together. The PI planning event functions as the central heartbeat of the entire Agile Release Train, requiring intense, focused concentration from everyone involved. It is a time-boxed 2-day session where teams move from initial uncertainty to a shared commitment, which is why face-to-face or virtual real-time interaction is strictly required. You start with the strategic inputs, the vision, the roadmap, and the top 10 list of prioritized features from the program backlog. These artifacts translate high-level business goals into actionable work for teams to decompose. The agenda for these 2 days is rigorous, moving through team breakouts, draft plan reviews, and high-level management syncs. Because you are coordinating a massive group of over 100 individuals, the logistical overhead is significant, but the return on investment in terms of transparency and alignment is unmatched. We must view this as a deliberate socio-technical ceremony designed to surface dependencies long before they become bottlenecks. A crucial dimension of PI planning is the involvement of business owners who define the significance of the work through business value assignment. After teams draft their objectives, they present them for review, and business owners assign a value from 1 to 10, which creates a clear signal for prioritization. This process also introduces the concept of uncommitted objectives, which are items that teams include in their plans but do not commit to as part of their primary velocity calculation. These objectives act as a buffer, providing the flexibility needed to handle unexpected technical challenges or changing market conditions without breaking the overall system reliability. Predictability is a key metric within SAFe, and the strategic use of uncommitted objectives is exactly how mature trains maintain that indicator over time. It allows teams to be ambitious while simultaneously protecting the integrity of their commitment to the stakeholders. This nuance is precisely what we look for when discussing the maturity of an agile release train. As the agenda progresses towards the end of the second day, we transition into the management review and problem-solving session, followed by the final confidence vote. During the review, the train leaders look at the draft plan and the program board, which maps out cross-team dependencies and feature delivery dates. If the plan is deemed insufficient or fundamentally broken due to resource contention, the management team must facilitate adjustments on the spot. This is where leadership demonstrates its value, not by dictating solutions, but by clearing impediments that prevent the teams from succeeding. After the adjustments, the entire train conducts a confidence vote, typically using a scale of 1 to 5 fingers, to ensure genuine collective buy-in. If the room does not show high confidence, the cycle repeats until the plan is viable and everyone is ready to move forward. This final act ensures that the commitment is socialized and robust, rather than imposed from the top down. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today we are going to explore the mechanics and strategic utility of the program board within the Agile Release Train. This session will ground your understanding of how we visualize delivery dependencies and manage cross-team synchronization during the planning process. The program board stands as the primary artifact for visualizing the scope of an Agile release train during program increment planning. It is not merely a static display of sticky notes, but a dynamic instrument designed to foster transparency across multiple Agile teams. When teams engage in the creation of this board, they essentially map feature delivery against the planned iterations of the increment. You will observe columns representing individual iterations, while rows correspond to specific Agile teams responsible for completing their respective features. By placing features in the appropriate intersection, teams identify exactly when they expect to complete work. This collaborative workshop, often held during breakout sessions, requires teams to negotiate timelines and clarify their commitments before finalizing the plan. The board transforms individual team goals into a cohesive train-wide strategy that stakeholders can easily interpret. Visualizing dependencies is the most critical aspect of the program board, as it reveals the hidden complexity of a large-scale system. When a team identifies that one feature depends on the output of another team, they indicate this relationship using a string or a drawn line. Red strings are specifically used to highlight dependencies that pose a significant risk to the delivery schedule, forcing immediate attention from the involved parties. If a feature cannot be completed within the planned iteration due to a dependency shortfall, the dependency is elevated to a risk and marked with a red flag. These flags act as early warning signals, allowing the release train engineer and product management to address bottlenecks before they crystallize into failures. Identifying the critical path requires an honest assessment of these lines, as they highlight the sequence of work that determines the earliest finish date of the program. Management of these risks is not a one-time event. It occurs throughout the cadence to ensure the train stays on track. Beyond simple dependencies, the program board serves as a vital synchronization tool during the frequent ART sync meetings held throughout the program increment. It must serve as a living document, meaning that teams update the board as they encounter delays or discover new impediments during their sprint execution. The release train engineer relies on this visualization to track progress, as it facilitates a real-time view of whether the program will meet its milestone commitments. Milestones are distinct from team-level tasks because they represent critical progress points that concern the entire train or external stakeholders. You should be able to look at a complex board and immediately identify whether a team is likely to miss a milestone based on the concentration of dependencies. When interpreting these boards for an exam scenario, remember that the goal is to look for bottlenecks and patterns where team velocity fails to match the required feature delivery timeline. The collaborative nature of building this board ensures that all teams participate in the orchestration of a whole rather than just their local tasks. Product management plays a key role here by ensuring that the prioritized features align with the overall business objectives established before the planning session begins. Without this board, the Agile Release Train would operate as a collection of disjointed silos rather than an integrated, value-delivering organism. One common mistake in interpretation is assuming that the program board is only for management. In reality, it is the primary communication mechanism for the engineers to see their impact on the broader system. By keeping the board updated, you ensure that everyone understands the current state of the train and can pivot when things do not go exactly according to the initial plan. Mastering the board helps you understand how lean organizations maintain flow even when dealing with structural complexities that would stifle traditional projects. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to our focused look at the innovation and planning iteration. In this session, we will examine why this specific cadence is vital for maintaining long-term velocity and technical sustainability within SAFe. The innovation and planning iteration, often called the IP iteration, serves as a unique buffer that occurs at the end of every program increment. Unlike standard development iterations characterized by a steady rhythm of story completion, the IP iteration acts as a necessary gap in the schedule. It provides essential time for innovation, hackathons, and creative work that often gets pushed aside during the rush to deliver features. Without this dedicated period, the system risks becoming stagnant as teams focus solely on the immediate backlog rather than long-term improvement. By intentionally carving out this space, organizations allow for the exploration of new ideas, technical spikes, and architectural research. This structural pause is not optional if you intend to maintain a sustainable pace of delivery over the long term. It is fundamentally an economic decision, prioritizing the health and ingenuity of the system over the short-term throughput of a single cycle. One of the most tactical uses of the IP iteration is its function as a built-in buffer or architectural runway margin to ensure PI objectives are met. Development is notoriously difficult to estimate with perfect precision, and unforeseen technical debt or dependencies often emerge late in an increment. If a team encounters a critical delay that threatens the overall program objectives, the IP iteration provides that extra window to finalize testing or integrate complex components. However, this is not an excuse for poor planning during the earlier sprints. Instead, it represents a pragmatic acknowledgement that complex adaptive systems require slack to function effectively. When teams consistently use this time to close out objectives, they prevent the cascading failures that plague traditional projects. This creates a psychological sense of security, knowing that there is a controlled space to address late-breaking issues. Beyond buffer time, the IP iteration facilitates essential programmatic events, including the final system demo, the inspect and adapt workshop, and the preparations for the next program increment planning session. The system demo during this time allows stakeholders to see the fully integrated solution, which is far more valuable than individual team-level reviews. Following this, the inspect and adapt workshop provides a structured environment for the Agile Release Train to evaluate its performance and identify systemic impediments. The PI planning preparation that occurs during this window is equally crucial, as it allows architects and product management to refine the vision and roadmap for the next cycle. By consolidating these high-level synchronization activities into one iteration, we remove the distraction from the active development sprints. This cadence ensures that the transition between program increments is disciplined rather than chaotic. We must treat the IP iteration as an investment in professional development and infrastructure maintenance. Teams often operate with outdated tools or technical debt that slow down their velocity, and the IP iteration offers the only logical time to perform significant system upgrades. Furthermore, it is the ideal time for continuing education, where engineers can master new languages, frameworks, or methodologies. If you ask a developer to learn a new security protocol while they are also trying to meet a strict feature deadline, you're setting them up for failure and frustration. By designating this time for growth, the organization demonstrates a commitment to the Lean-Agile principle of building quality into the system. This directly contributes to the relentless improvement pillar, as teams emerge from the iteration with better tools and increased capabilities. There is a strict rule regarding this phase, which is often referred to as the no new work rule, designed specifically to prevent burnout. Throughout the standard development sprints, teams are in a state of high-intensity focus, which is mentally and physically draining. If management decides to load the IP iteration with new stories or unplanned features, the entire purpose of the buffer is defeated. Forcing constant delivery without reprieve inevitably leads to a degradation of quality and team morale. The IP iteration must be protected from a standard push of the backlog, or it simply becomes an extension of the previous sprint. Leaders must recognize that innovation is a fragile process that requires a change in context from the repetitive cycle of development. By preserving this boundary, you ensure that your team remains capable of delivering high-quality work in the subsequent program increment. In short, the IP iteration is a critical component for maintaining a sustainable pace and driving long-term value. We will continue from here in the next lecture. Welcome back. We are now entering the Inspect and Adapt chapter, where we will examine the critical mechanisms that close the loop on our program increment cycle. The Inspect and Adapt workshop stands as the cornerstone of the Scaled Agile Framework's commitment to continuous improvement. It occurs at the end of every program increment, providing a dedicated space for the Agile Release Train to reflect on its performance. By systematically reviewing outcomes, the entire train, including stakeholders, business owners, and all participating teams, gathers to assess the reality of their achievements. This is not merely a meeting for observation. It is a structured environment designed to foster transparency and organizational growth. Without this formal touchpoint, the feedback loops that sustain business agility would inevitably stagnate. We must view this event as the primary catalyst for evolving our processes and the quality of our delivery. The event begins with the PI system demo, which provides an objective view of the current state of the solution by showcasing the integrated work of all teams on the train. This is followed by the quantitative measurement segment, where we evaluate the program predictability measure. This metric specifically compares the achieved business value against the planned business value agreed upon at the start of the increment. By looking at these numbers, we can determine the reliability of our planning and execution capabilities over a sustained period. This data-driven approach removes subjective biases, as teams must account for both their successes and their deviations from the original plan. Achieving a predictable rhythm is essential to gaining the trust of the business, which in turn reinforces the stability of the entire enterprise. Once the demonstration and quantitative analysis conclude, the workshop transitions into the retrospective and problem-solving portion. This is the heart of where the release train engineer facilitates an environment of radical candor and safety. We identify systemic impediments, those complex cross-team blockers that local teams cannot solve on their own. To move past surface-level symptoms, participants utilize techniques such as the 5 whys, which forces a deeper investigation into the causal chain of an issue. Furthermore, we often apply Pareto analysis to visualize where the bulk of our challenges originate, allowing the train to focus its limited energy on the most impactful systemic improvements. This methodology ensures that we are addressing the root causes of friction rather than merely applying bandages to symptoms. The final output of this intensive process is not a list of complaints, but a structured list of actionable improvement items for the next program increment. These items are refined into clear objectives and added to the program backlog, ensuring they have ownership and defined expected outcomes. It is the responsibility of the release train engineer to ensure that these items do not disappear into the background noise of daily work. By elevating these improvements to the level of program-wide priorities, we institutionalize the culture of continuous learning. When every team sees the results of their feedback turned into actual process changes, engagement throughout the Agile Release Train drastically improves. This transition from reflection to action is what separates high-performing organizations from those that simply go through the motions of Agile ceremonies. See you in the next lecture. Welcome back. Today, we must unpack the continuous delivery pipeline and the overarching DevOps mindset that SAFe relies upon to maintain high-velocity value delivery. DevOps in SAFe is often summarized through the CLMR approach, which stands for culture, automation, lean, measurement, and recovery. Culture emphasizes shared responsibility between development and operations, breaking down the silos that traditionally hinder rapid release cycles. Automation is the engine of the pipeline, intended to remove manual, error-prone tasks that stall progression. Lean principles keep the flow moving by minimizing waste and focusing on small batch sizes, which reduces technical debt and cognitive load. Measurement is crucial because it provides the objective data necessary to understand the system's performance and impact on the business. Finally, recovery focuses on building system resilience, acknowledging that failures will happen and ensuring that the team can revert or fix issues quickly without catastrophic downtime. The continuous delivery pipeline is the structural backbone of this agility, consisting of continuous exploration, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and release on demand. Continuous exploration is the phase where we synthesize customer research into a vision, roadmap, and a groomed backlog of features. It represents the thinking part of the pipeline where we align technical work with the actual market needs before building them. Once the work moves into development, continuous integration takes over by bringing code together from different contributors into a shared trunk, ensuring that it remains in a deployable state. This requires a robust architectural runway, as you cannot maintain a pipeline without the necessary infrastructure and technical enablers supporting your base systems. If the infrastructure does not support rapid integration, the entire pipeline grinds to a halt. Moving forward, continuous deployment pushes these integrated changes into a production environment, though it is vital to distinguish between a technical deployment and a business release. Deployment involves moving code through the pipeline into a staging or production instance, potentially hidden behind feature toggles. Feature toggles are essential because they allow us to decouple the act of deploying code from the act of unleashing functionality to end users. This technique enables dark launches, where features are tested in the real environment with a subset of users, providing feedback while mitigating risk. By utilizing these toggles, we can perform experiments in production while maintaining system stability, which aligns technical practices with business needs for reliable, rapid value delivery. One aspect that often confuses practitioners is how security and compliance fit into this fast-paced structure. In SAFe, we treat security as an integral part of the development process rather than a final checklist performed right before go live, a philosophy often referred to as DevSecOps. By automating security tests within the pipeline, We manage compliance concerns continuously throughout the iteration, rather than stalling the release at the finish line for a manual audit. This integration ensures that the architectural runway serves not just to support new features, but to maintain the integrity and safety of the system. Compliance becomes a byproduct of the process, built into the automation scripts that validate our system against organizational requirements. Ultimately, the goal of this pipeline is to achieve release on demand, which means the business has the capability to serve the customer precisely when that value is needed. It necessitates maturity in both cultural and technical practices, ensuring that the organization can shift from a project-based mindset to a flow-based mindset. When you see this on the exam, remember that the pipeline is not just about tools or software, but about the capability to deliver value reliably and safely. Focusing on the distinction between the stages will help you better understand how roles interact within the Agile Release Train to contribute to this flow. It is about removing the friction between an idea forming in the mind of the stakeholder and the actual implementation realized by the user. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to our dedicated session on preparing for the PI execution domain, where we will crystallize our understanding of the most rigorous testing areas in the SAFe certification. When we approach the PI planning agenda, it is essential to view it not as a sequence of meetings, but as a deliberate mechanism for synchronization. You must understand that the sequence starts with the business context and ends with the confidence vote, covering the essential draft plans and management reviews in between. A common pitfall is confusing the purpose of business value with story points. Remember that story points measure the effort or complexity required to complete a backlog item, while business value is assigned to PI objectives to signify the strategic importance of an outcome from the business perspective. If you're asked to prioritize, always look for the weight of the PI objectives as calculated by the business owners in collaboration with the teams. The release train engineer plays a specific role during the management review, and you should recognize that their primary responsibility is to facilitate the adjustment of the scope or the plan based on the feedback from the draft plan review. They act as a neutral coach who ensures that dependencies recorded on the program board are addressed and that the plan remains feasible within the iteration constraints. The CLMR acronym serves as a foundational heuristic for DevOps and should be viewed as an integrated mindset rather than a checklist. Culture represents the organization. Automation deals with the continuous delivery pipeline. Lean flow optimizes the process. Measurement provides feedback, and recovery focuses on reducing the mean time to restore. When a question provides a scenario about a system failure, look for answers that emphasize recovery and the reduction of blast radius rather than just manual interventions. This relates directly to the nuance between release on demand and continuous deployment. Release on demand is about decoupling the technical act of deploying code from the business decision to make features available to the customer, while continuous deployment is a technical practice that ensures code is always in a deployable state. You should never conflate these two concepts in your analysis of the continuous delivery pipeline, as they operate at different levels of the organization and the value stream architecture. Dependency management on the program board is another area where the exam tests your practical judgment. If you see a dependency that remains unresolved, the correct approach is rarely to escalate immediately to higher management. Instead, you should focus on the collaborative resolution between the teams involved, often facilitated by the RT. If the teams cannot find a solution, only then does it become an issue for the management review board to address. Regarding the confidence vote, remember that it is a collective measure of commitment, not a simple majority opinion. If the confidence level is low, the entire train must pause to identify the blockers and renegotiate the PI plan until confidence is restored to a sufficient level. This is not a failure of the event, but a successful enactment of the built-in quality and transparency principles that underpin the entire framework. The innovation and planning iteration often called the IP iteration, is frequently misunderstood as just a buffer for unfinished work. In reality, it serves as the essential guardrail for capacity, providing time for innovation, education, and the inspect and adapt workshop. The inspect and adapt workshop itself consists of three distinct parts: the PI system demo, the quantitative measurement session, and the problem-solving workshop. When you encounter questions about this, categorize the activity correctly to determine the outcome. The system demo confirms the current state of the product, the metrics quantify the reality, and the root cause analysis determines the future improvement. Treat the IP iteration as an immutable element of the art's schedule, as it is the only way to break the cycle of infinite buildup and ensure sustainable delivery cadences for the next increment. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to this chapter, where we will explore the lean portfolio management function within the Scaled Agile Framework. By mastering these concepts, you will gain the competence required to align enterprise strategy with execution, ensuring your organization moves beyond mere delivery to driving actual business value. Lean portfolio management, or LPM, serves as the essential bridge between the high-level strategy of the enterprise and the actual execution performed by Agile Release Trains. It represents the highest level of decision-making within the framework, shifting the focus from managing individual projects to managing a portfolio of value streams. At its core, LPM is organized into three primary dimensions: strategy and investment funding, agile portfolio operations, and lean governance. Strategy and investment funding centers on the idea that the portfolio must connect enterprise strategy to execution through strategic themes and the portfolio canvas. Agile portfolio operations coordinates decentralized execution, while lean governance manages spending, audit, and compliance. By integrating these three dimensions, an organization can effectively decentralize decision-making while maintaining alignment with its long-term objectives. Connecting corporate strategy to daily work requires a mechanism to translate vague goals into actionable items, which is handled through strategic themes. These are differentiated business objectives that connect the portfolio to the enterprise's broader mission, providing context for how we prioritize investments. When we populate the portfolio canvas, we are essentially defining the current and future state of our value streams, which helps us visualize our strategic positioning. In this environment, the Epic owner acts as the primary driver for these high-level initiatives, fostering collaboration between business and technical stakeholders to shepherd epics through the life cycle. Simultaneously, the enterprise architect works to ensure that these strategic shifts remain technically feasible and consistent with the architectural runway. Without these roles, the portfolio risks becoming disconnected from the technical reality of the software systems, leading to a breakdown in execution. One of the most significant shifts in LPM is the transition away from traditional project-based accounting toward value stream funding. In a project-based model, accounting treats projects as temporary entities, which often triggers an annual cycle of stop-and-start resource allocation. Lean Agile accounting, by contrast, funds the value streams themselves, allowing for longer-term stability and faster pivots, since the money follows the value rather than the project scope. We manage this flow using the portfolio Kanban, a visualization tool that helps stakeholders see the work in progress of high-level initiatives. When we apply portfolio budgets, we typically utilize guardrails to ensure that investment remains balanced between ongoing operations and new development. These guardrails provide the autonomy needed for teams to execute, while also setting the boundaries that prevent overspending or architectural neglect. To measure our success, we move away from output-based measures like lines of code or story points, and instead, we adopt objectives and key results, or OKRs. These offer a transparent way to measure strategic alignment and progress, forcing the organization to focus on outcomes rather than just activities. The Agile Program Management Office, or APMO, plays a critical role here by evolving from a command and control function to one that supports operational excellence and decentralized execution. They facilitate the flow of information across the portfolio, ensuring that roadblocks are identified and handled at the appropriate level. As we look at the interaction between these roles and governance, it becomes clear that decentralized decision-making is not a synonym for lack of control. Instead, it is a deliberate design choice that requires clear boundary conditions and an unwavering focus on the strategic goals of the portfolio. Transitioning to this model requires a deep understanding of how these mechanisms interact to preserve the integrity of the organizational strategy. When we define budget guardrails, for instance, we are explicitly stating what is permissible, which empowers the teams to make local decisions without constant escalation to leadership. This operational transparency is necessary for the APMO to provide value without becoming a bottleneck. By continuously inspecting the portfolio Kanban, we can detect if our strategic themes are actually influencing the work in the value streams, or if we have drifted into operational maintenance mode. This oversight is what separates successful portfolios from those that succumb to inertia. As you digest these components, remember that the goal is not to create a rigid planning process, but rather to create a responsive, adaptive, and value-driven ecosystem that can survive in a digital market. I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome back. In this lesson, we will examine the shift from project-based funding to value stream funding, which is essential for understanding how SAFe enables long-term business agility. To understand the mechanics of value streams, we must first distinguish between operational and development value streams. Operational value streams represent the sequence of activities an organization performs to provide value to a customer, such as order fulfillment or loan processing. In contrast, development value streams are the processes used to build the systems and capabilities that enable those operational value streams. Most organizations suffer from fragmentation because they organize departments around functions rather than outcomes. By identifying these two types of value streams, we can reorganize the enterprise around the actual flow of value. This is the fundamental shift central to SAFe, shifting the focus from managing individual, siloed projects to sustaining long-term, cross-functional teams that support a specific value stream. When we stop viewing software delivery as a series of temporary, disconnected projects, we stop the constant cycle of forming and reforming teams, which often destroys productivity and technical knowledge. Traditional project accounting requires significant overhead as organizations attempt to track cost and progress against specific project milestones that rarely reflect the actual delivery of value. Lean budgeting flips this model by funding the value stream itself rather than the individual projects residing within it. Because Agile Release Trains represent long-lived teams of teams, they provide the stability required to optimize throughput and quality over time. Instead of constantly shifting people to where the project budget dictates, we keep the teams together and shift the work to the teams. This approach drastically simplifies financial governance by reducing the need for rigid, annual project-based accounting. We move toward a continuous flow model where funding is adjusted based on strategy and performance rather than arbitrary annual cycles. This shift allows the organization to avoid the big bang planning trap, replacing it with a rolling wave approach to budgeting that is both more predictable and more responsive to market shifts. Managing these budgets effectively requires a rigorous application of budget guardrails, the most prominent being the use of investment horizons. These horizons classify investments into 4 categories, from Horizon 0, which encompasses existing live solutions, to Horizon 3, which focuses on exploring new opportunities. By categorizing our portfolio this way, we ensure that we are not over-investing in legacy systems while neglecting future innovation. Another critical guardrail is capacity allocation, which dictates how much of the team's bandwidth should be dedicated to new features versus technical enablers. This ensures that long-term system health is not sacrificed for short-term feature delivery. Furthermore, the approval process for significant initiatives is moved into the portfolio Kanban, providing visibility and alignment that traditional project charters often lack. These guardrails prevent financial drift and ensure that every dollar spent aligns with the overarching strategic themes of the enterprise. Finally, we must consider the implications for financial reporting and resource management within this framework. In many modern organizations, the capitalization of software development costs is a significant accounting concern that necessitates clear visibility into the nature of the work being performed. By organizing around value streams, the separation between maintenance activities and new development becomes more transparent, which simplifies the adherence to accounting standards. Furthermore, resource management moves away from tracking headcounts on individual projects to managing the total capacity of the Agile Release Train. This fosters a culture of enterprise-level responsibility where leaders view the portfolio as a holistic ecosystem. When decision-making is devolved to the people closer to the work, the organization achieves a much higher degree of adaptability. Ultimately, moving to value stream funding is not just a financial change. It is a structural commitment to the principles of lean agile delivery. I look forward to discussing how we govern these investments in the next session. Welcome to our discussion on how SAFe manages high-level initiatives through the portfolio Kanban and the structure of epics. We will explore the flow of work from initial concepts to final implementation. The portfolio Kanban system serves as the primary mechanism for visualizing and managing the flow of portfolio epics. It provides a shared space where leadership can transparently track the progression of large-scale initiatives without overwhelming individual teams. The workflow transitions through several distinct states that ensure organizational alignment before resources are committed. These states are the funnel, review, analysis, backlog, implementing, and done. In the funnel, all new ideas are captured regardless of their origin or intent. The review stage filters these ideas based on their alignment with strategic themes, while the analysis state involves the creation of a lean business case. The backlog acts as a holding area for approved work ready to be pulled into implementation. Finally, the implementing state represents the actual execution by Agile Release Trains, while done signifies the realization of value. A portfolio epic is a significant initiative that is typically cross-cutting, spanning multiple Agile Release Trains or even solution trains. Because these initiatives require substantial investment and time, they demand a structured anatomy to ensure clarity and accountability. Every epic must include a clear value statement that describes the problem to be solved and the benefits to the organization. Additionally, you must define success criteria that allow the business to measure the return on investment once the work is complete. Non-functional requirements, which are often overlooked, represent the quality attributes like performance, security, and scalability that the system must maintain. By documenting these elements, the epic owner can effectively guide the initiative through the Kanban system. The epic owner acts as the primary steward, ensuring the hypothesis behind the epic remains valid throughout the development lifecycle. Developing a lean business case is perhaps the most critical activity during the analysis phase of the Kanban. This document serves as a decision-making tool, summarizing the anticipated benefits and the potential investment required. Instead of detailed, upfront plans, the focus remains on the viability of the hypothesis. This is where the concept of a minimum viable product becomes essential for an epic. An MVP allows the organization to validate the underlying assumptions of the epic with minimal effort and risk. If the data from an MVP suggests that the investment will not yield the expected results, the epic can be pivoted or abandoned early. This prevents the sunk cost fallacy, where teams continue working on initiatives simply because they have already spent significant resources. Lean business cases are thus living documents that evolve as new learning occurs during the development process. Once epics are ready in the portfolio backlog, they must be prioritized to ensure they deliver the maximum possible value to the business. We use the weighted shortest job first method, commonly referred to as WSJF, to establish this priority. WSJF prioritizes work by dividing the cost of delay by the job duration, typically represented as the size of the initiative. This simple calculation prevents organizations from deferring high-value initiatives in favor of smaller, less important tasks. Portfolio epics inherently differ from program-level features in scope and duration. While a feature might be delivered by a single team or a single Agile release train within a single program increment, an epic is much broader. These large-scale initiatives often persist over several months or years and require intense coordination across dozens of teams. Effectively managing these cross-cutting initiatives requires a high degree of collaboration across the portfolio. Because these epics span multiple release trains, the responsibility for implementation must be carefully delegated. Once an epic reaches the implementing state, the arts pull the work as capacity permits. This pull-based system helps prevent the overburdening of teams while ensuring that the most valuable strategic work is always in progress. It is important to distinguish this flow from traditional project management, where fixed deadlines often dictate progress regardless of capacity. By leveraging the portfolio Kanban, leadership can balance the demands of current operations with the need to evolve the system. This structural approach provides the visibility necessary to make informed decisions about long-term strategic investments. I hope this overview clarifies how these components work together within the framework. See you in the next session. Welcome back. In this chapter, we will explore how high-level business strategy translates into concrete execution through strategic themes and objectives and key results, ensuring your organization moves as a single, aligned unit. SAFE positions strategic themes as the critical bridge connecting the enterprise business strategy to the development portfolio. While the vision statement might describe a distant future, strategic themes provide the specific, actionable objectives that guide the portfolio's investment decisions. These themes act as a filter for all portfolio-level activity, ensuring that the work chosen for the portfolio backlog directly reinforces the company's current value proposition. If an initiative under consideration does not contribute to a strategic theme, it becomes harder to justify its existence within the funding model. By embedding these themes into the portfolio canvas, leaders ensure that every dollar spent is directed toward the most essential business outcomes. This connection forces a level of discipline that often prevents the accumulation of low-value, legacy projects that do not push the needle for the business. To track the effectiveness of these themes, we adopt objectives and key results, or OKRs, as an instrument for transparency and focus. An objective sets the qualitative direction, what we want to achieve, while the key results provide the quantitative evidence of reaching that goal. At the portfolio level, they force us to define what success actually looks like in measurable terms. If we decide that a strategic theme is to expand into a new market, our OKRs might specify a target percentage of market share or a specific number of new active users within a set time frame. This approach moves the conversation away from vanity metrics, such as how many lines of code we wrote, toward business outcomes, such as how much value we deliver to our core demographic. When an entire organization uses this language, the disconnect between management and engineering starts to dissolve. This alignment fundamentally changes how we prioritize work through weighted shortest job first, or WSJF. Because strategic themes represent the most important goals, they act as the primary multiplier in our cost of delay calculations. When we evaluate an epic or feature, we ask how strongly it supports a given strategic theme. That answer directly influences the score. An initiative that perfectly aligns with a burning strategic need will naturally move to the front of the line, while others wait. This ensures that every Agile Release Train, or ART, is not simply working on something busy, but is instead working on something validated as strategically vital. It brings the top-level goals of the business right down to the daily activities of the developers. However, these themes are not set in stone, as the digital landscape is notoriously volatile and prone to sudden shifts in customer demand. Periodic reviews are mandatory so that we can pivot the portfolio whenever market conditions dictate a change in direction. By using OKRs at both the portfolio level and the individual art levels, we create a nested structure that fosters alignment without over-managing individual tasks. This transparency allows leaders to communicate a singular vision effectively, ensuring that everyone from the executive suite to the team member knows exactly why their current work matters. We measure not just business growth, but also technical health improvements, as a stable foundation is required to achieve any long-term strategic goal. By treating strategy as a dynamic, measurable system, we minimize wasted effort and maximize the impact of every release. I will see you in the next lecture. Welcome to this deep dive into Agile portfolio operations and governance, where we will examine how to maintain alignment and excellence across the entire enterprise. When we shift our focus to the portfolio level, we are essentially moving from purely tactical execution to a broader orchestration of value. Agile portfolio operations functions as the heartbeat that keeps multiple value streams aligned with the overall enterprise strategy, ensuring that the organization does not simply move fast, but moves in the right direction. The Agile Portfolio Management Office, or APMO, acts as the facilitator for this alignment, moving away from command and control structures toward a model of support and enablement. Simultaneously, the Lean Agile Center of Excellence, or LACE, serves as a catalyst for cultural change, acting as an internal consultancy that coaches leaders and teams on the practical application of Lean Agile principles. These two entities do not dictate work. Rather, they foster an environment where decentralized decision-making thrives while maintaining necessary organizational guardrails. By offloading bureaucracy and focusing on high-level orchestration, these groups ensure that teams understand how their local initiatives contribute to the broader strategic goals established by executive leadership. Governance in a lean agile context is often misunderstood as a synonym for oversight, but in SAFe, it is actually about ensuring fiscal responsibility and adherence to regulatory standards without stifling the flow of value. We implement this through what we call lean governance, which prioritizes lightweight, automated reporting over traditional, manual status updates that rarely capture the true health of a project. Using a portfolio dashboard, leadership can view the status of epics, monitor flow metrics, and track progress against strategic themes in real time. This visibility allows for pivot or persevere decisions based on objective data rather than vanity metrics or subjective opinions. When we manage compliance in an agile environment, we must build quality and regulatory checkpoints directly into the delivery pipeline, ensuring that audit trails are a natural output of our ongoing development processes rather than a frantic effort at the end of a fiscal year. This approach allows the organization to remain agile and responsive to market shifts while maintaining the discipline required by enterprise standards. To maintain this synergy, we rely on two primary feedback loops: the portfolio sync and the strategic portfolio review. The portfolio sync is a recurring event where the focus is on the health of the portfolio, the progress of various initiatives, and the removal of cross-cutting impediments that slow down multiple value streams. On the other hand, the strategic portfolio review is a monthly or quarterly activity that shifts the lens to long-term adaptation, reassessing the portfolio vision and considering new investment opportunities in light of changing market conditions. These meetings are not mere status rituals. They are strategic synchronization points that prevent silos from forming and ensure that money and effort are consistently allocated to where they produce the most value. By facilitating these conversations, the APMO ensures, for instance, that a delay in one value stream does not catch the business by surprise, but is instead managed transparently as part of the overall portfolio health. Finally, we must recognize that horizontal knowledge sharing is just as important as vertical alignment, which is where communities of practice, or COPs, come into play. These groups allow roles like Scrum Masters and Product Owners to connect across different value streams, sharing the specific challenges they face and the solutions that worked in their unique contexts. By fostering these COPs, the leadership team ensures that the organization evolves as a learning entity, preventing the reinvention of the wheel every time a new challenge arises. This network-based approach to problem solving is fundamental to achieving true business agility, as it democratizes insight and builds institutional knowledge that survives beyond the duration of any single project. As you think about how these components tie together, remember that your goal is to support an ecosystem that is both highly adaptable to new opportunities and rigorously focused on fiscal responsibility. I hope this overview clarifies the structural mechanisms behind high-performing portfolios. Talk to you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this session, we will consolidate our understanding of lean portfolio management by reviewing critical concepts that frequently appear in the certification exam. Lean portfolio management, or LPM, serves as the bridge between enterprise strategy and portfolio execution, ensuring that the organization aligns its investments with its stated objectives. At the heart of this alignment are strategic themes, which are business objectives that connect a portfolio to the enterprise strategy. When you encounter exam questions regarding these themes, remember that they influence the portfolio's vision and provide the context for decision-making. You must also be familiar with the portfolio canvas, a template used to describe the portfolio and its value streams, and how lean budgeting shifts financial control from project-based funding to value stream funding. This shift is intentional. It reduces the overhead of project-level accounting and allows funds to remain flexible. Furthermore, portfolio guardrails act as the policies and practices that govern the budget, ensuring that spending remains within acceptable boundaries without requiring constant oversight. You should recognize that these guardrails are essential for maintaining decentralized control while ensuring organizational compliance. Identifying the specific responsibilities of key roles is a recurring theme in the examination, particularly concerning the epic owner and the enterprise architect. The epic owner acts as the shepherd of a portfolio epic, taking responsibility for the business case and collaborating with stakeholders throughout the life cycle of the initiative. Conversely, the enterprise architect focuses on the technical integrity of the portfolio, ensuring that architectural considerations align with the evolving strategy of the organization. When analyzing questions about the portfolio Kanban, consider its role as the primary mechanism for visualizing and managing the flow of portfolio epics from funnel to done. A portfolio epic business case is not merely a document, but a lightweight artifact that justifies the investment by defining the expected business outcomes and criteria. It serves as an evidence-based tool for decision-makers to evaluate whether a proposed epic provides sufficient value to warrant its place in the pipeline. Distinguishing between funding models is another area where candidates often stumble, specifically the difference between funding value streams versus individual projects. Projects are inherently temporary, often leading to organizational silos and resource bottlenecks when the project ends, which contradicts the long-lived nature of an Agile release train. By contrast, funding value streams provide steady, predictable support for the people and assets required to deliver continuous value. You should also be comfortable with investment horizons, which categorize a portfolio's initiatives into time-based buckets like Horizon 1, 2, and 3. These horizons help leadership balance the need for immediate returns with the requirement to explore future innovations. Additionally, applying weighted shortest job first, or WSJF, at the portfolio level allows for the prioritization of epics based on the cost of delay relative to job size. Always look for clues in the exam prompt that suggest the urgency of an initiative. Higher cost of delay typically correlates with a higher priority rating in the WSJF calculation. The CLMR approach, covering culture, automation, lean flow, measurement, and recovery, is not restricted to technical teams, but is central to portfolio operations. Applying this mindset means creating a culture that supports continuous improvement, utilizing automation to streamline governance, and measuring outcomes rather than traditional outputs. Within the context of portfolio governance, you will likely face scenarios that test your understanding of centralized versus decentralized decision-making. Safe advocates for decentralizing decision-making to the level where the information exists, while centralizing only those decisions that have long-term impacts or economies of scale. The Lean Agile Center of Excellence, or LACE, functions as a cross-functional team responsible for leading the transformation within the organization. Their mission is to foster a culture of learning and ensure that everyone within the portfolio understands the transition toward business agility. Use your common sense when answering questions about these structures. They exist to empower teams, not to add bureaucratic layers. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to the final stage of your preparation, where we will consolidate our understanding and sharpen your focus for the upcoming exam. In this session, we will synthesize the SAFe core competencies and principles to ensure you are ready to demonstrate your expertise. To approach the exam effectively, you must realize that the correct answer is almost always the one that aligns strictly with the SAFe framework, rather than with what you practiced at your previous employer. Real-world experience is valuable, but in the context of the assessment, you are expected to represent the ideal implementations defined by Scaled Agile. If you encounter a scenario that seems ambiguous, look for the choice that prioritizes organizational alignment, decentralized decision-making, or flow rather than siloed optimizations. The framework provides a standardized language for enterprise agility, and the exam serves as a litmus test for your fluency in that specific vocabulary. Do not allow your personal biases about how business works to override the prescribed methodology. When in doubt, lean on the foundational pillar of the SAFe House of Lean, which emphasizes value, respect for people, flow, and innovation. Your preparation should prioritize a deep mental mapping of the SAFe big picture, which illustrates the interplay between horizontal and vertical elements. The vertical columns represent the flow of value through the portfolio, program, and team levels, while the horizontal layers denote the essential synchronization required to maintain continuity. Pay close attention to how PI planning acts as the heartbeat of the system, setting the cadence for the entire Agile Release Train. Ensure you have mastered the economic logic behind weighted shortest job first, which is a common source of exam questions. Understanding how to calculate cost of delay against job duration is essential for justifying lean budgeting decisions. If you cannot explain why we prioritize certain epics over others based on these metrics, spend additional time reviewing the decision-making patterns at the portfolio level. As you sit down for the exam, your primary technical asset remains the official SAFe practice exam. Treat this not just as a set of questions to memorize, but as a diagnostic tool to identify where your conceptual gaps lie. If you consistently miss questions concerning the inspect and adapt workshop or the definition of enablers, go back to the source material rather than assuming you will guess correctly next time. Effective time management during the test is critical, so adopt a triage approach for every question you encounter. Do not spend 5 minutes on a single item. Instead, flag the difficult questions and return to them after you have secured points on the ones you know immediately. This keeps your momentum high and prevents the anxiety of a ticking clock from clouding your judgment on the simpler items. Finally, reflect on why you are pursuing this credential in the first place, as the Certified Safe Agilist title represents a commitment to scaling value in large, complex enterprises. Becoming certified is not merely the end of a training session, but the beginning of your role as a change agent capable of leading an organization-wide Lean Agile transformation. Once you pass, you will gain access to the SAFE Community Platform, which provides a breadth of collateral to support your ongoing practice. Remember that continuous improvement is inherent to the framework, both for the enterprise and for your own professional growth. Keep your analytical mindset sharp, trust the study path you have followed, and remain calm as you navigate the assessment. Good luck on your certification exam.